Recording is in progress, and welcome to Secondsies³, where culture, artistry, and tradition converge across the globe. In this space, we engage with a diverse landscape of the arts, from the grand stages of major cities to the intimate community-driven performances in far-flung territories and dependencies. We delve in principalities as well, and we delve into the heart of performance culture, explore how each region expresses identity, history, and emotion through dance, theater, and music. And through thoughtful discussion and critical reflection, we honor both the old and the new, seeking universal truths that build and bind artistic endeavors together. And this is presented by Alma Pictures LLC and brought to you by Jessica Galletta, Ayla Hadi, and Allison Weaver. So without further ado, we're going to listen to Jessica present the world of high society, and she will present through the eyes of the lovely Princess Grace of Monaco. So go ahead.
Hello. Today, we will be exploring the tiny principality of Monaco through the eyes of Princess Grace of Monaco and her film, High Society, which was the final film she made before marrying Prince Rainier of Monaco and becoming princess and ending her acting career to do her princess duties, as one does. So she was the Meghan Markle of her time. All right, so part one. Starting with some information about Monaco. It is nestled between the French and Italian borders. Its location on the national travelers. It's also bordered by the Mediterranean Ocean and sits just west of Liguria, Italia. Monaco's government is a constitutional monarchy headed by the prince. The Grimaldi family has maintained their royal status since 1297. The Cunning, with his brother, captured the fortress on the Rock of Monaco. And it was not until 1489 that King Charles VIII recognized the principality's sovereignty. Catholicism is Monaco's official religion. And along with the official religion, the four main ethnic groups living in Monaco are Monegasques, the French, the Italian, and the Occitan. French is their official language, but people also speak Monegasque, Italian, and the Italian dialect Ligurian. Very few people actually speak Monegasque as their first language, but in 1976, it became a compulsory subject in Monaco's schools because we love heritage. So here are some key events that happened in Monaco in the 20th century. In 1911, Monaco ratifies a constitution and becomes a constitutional monarchy, establishes the National Council, a legislative body with law enacting powers, with the Prince of Monaco as head of state. And then 18 years later, in 1929, this is where we see Monaco's cultural influence on the world as a prime social destination for the elite, wealthy and affluent, is the first automobile Grand Prix in Monaco. It is the social event of the season, even to this day. The Grand Prix still happens and attracts international tourists and business people. And then we have this really cool event happening in 1956, which we will get to. It has a heart, so I think you may, a little clue. And then a couple of years after that, between 1956 and 1962, the Constitution was dissolved because Prince Rainier III had some issues. There was some confliction, and it was suspended. But then in 1959, so that was in 1959. And then in 1962, it was reestablished with a more liberal constitution. And it reestablishes the National Council, giving them political authority again. Prince is still head of state, but Monaco has a constitution again. Hurrah. And then flash forward to the end of the 20th century in 1993, Monaco finally joins the United Nations as the smallest sovereign state to become a member of the UN up to this point. So let's pop quiz. What do you think happened in 1956?
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, so if you've seen the hit TV series Bridgerton or any other period piece that is currently streaming, like The Buccaneers, it's my favorite. On April 19th, 1956, Grace Kelly married Prince Rainier III of Monaco, becoming Princess Grace of Monaco. And that would be how she was known for the rest of her life, Princess Grace. She had just completed her final film, High Society, that March, and we will discuss that presently. They had the day before their actual wedding, the big one, the big royal to-do, the couple held their more intimate civil ceremony, which is really cute. Due to her marriage and taking on her duties as a member of the Monaco royal family, Grace Kelly retired from her acting career at the ripe old age of 26. Like, she was at the top of her game. And then she's like, actually, there's this like other gig I have that's like way cooler. I'm gonna be a princess. And the world was like, valid. Okay, these are just some more wedding photos of Grace Kelly. She looks really pretty. There's her praying with the prince. This is her looking fierce. This was a big fashion moment in Hollywood. Obviously, a Hollywood starlet is marrying a prince and becoming a princess, which is like the Disney script writes itself. And she already is a fashion icon and she is beautiful. So, of course, this becomes a big fashion moment in the mid-20th century around this time, as we can see. And actually, her dress and some of her wedding things still exist. They're archived by the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which is where Grace Kelly is from. So these are copyrighted images, so that's why I have Philadelphia Museum of Art credited. They are not officially on display, but the museum has these pieces in their collection. You're just waiting for an exhibit to happen. So we see her veil, the crown, her dress, a sketch of her dress, her shoes, and her little Bible, because she is a very devout Catholic. She grew up in a Catholic family and was devout her entire life. And we see a picture of her praying in her wedding dress, which is a really beautiful picture. So holy. All right, so here, even one of these things for anyone would be a dream that is unattainable by most. But Miss Grace Kelly, or Princess Grace of Monaco, so iconic, managed to do all three of them. From Philadelphia socialite to Hollywood starlet to Princess of Monaco. Crazy. Part 2. Or actually, yes. So actually, part 2 will be coming. Sorry, my bad. So this is about her life. Grace Kelly was born in 1929 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA, to an affluent Catholic family, and which made her a prominent member of Philadelphia's, quote, high society. Kelly remained a devout Catholic her entire life. When she graduated high school, she moved to New York City to study acting at the American Academy of Dramatic Art. Her film career began with films 14 Hours and High Noon. Eventually, she signed a contract with MGM and rose to stardom with numerous critically acclaimed roles in notable projects. She worked with Alfred Hitchcock, one of Hitchcock's blondes, is a pop culture reference, in 3 of his films, Dial M for Murder, To Catch a Thief, and Rear Window. Then she elevated into another exclusive club of Oscar winners for her role alongside Bing Crosby, the first of 2 roles, in The Country Girl in 1954, which also won her a Golden Globe. She played Bing Crosby's love interest for a second and final time in the film High Society, a musical based on an earlier film which starred Katharine Hepburn, another Philly icon, called The Philadelphia Story. At some point, she and Prince Rainier III met briefly at a public event. He was immediately taken with her. Whirlwind romance. They stayed in contact, and the prince went and visited her and met her family at the family estate in Philadelphia in the neighborhood East Falls at the address 3901 Henry Avenue, where he proposed after only 3 days. After their marriage, she took on her duties as Princess Grace of Monaco and retired from her acting career. I wonder how conflicted she felt about that, because she really was a great actress and she clearly loved doing acting. So, but she also loved the prince and she loved her duties to her new country. She founded Princess Grace Foundation.
I'll link one of her last interviews in the comments that answers a little bit of your question that you just asked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Intriguing. Okay, well, the audience can do more research. Okay, so she no longer worked as an actress. She spent the rest of her life supporting the arts and pursuing philanthropic work, helping build Monaco's rising arts and cultural scene as it became a prime vacation / tax haven destination for the rich and other international travelers. The principality sought to expand the country's reputation in other areas besides being known as a place for wealthy people to have a tax haven. She founded the Princess Grace Foundation in 1964, which is still active today, and also helped establish the Princess Grace Academy at a residence school for the Monte Carlo Ballet. In 1976, she joined the board for the 20th Century Fox Film Corporation as one of its first female members. So even as a princess, her passion for acting and cinema remained close to her heart. Sadly, in 1982, at the young age of 52, she died resulting from injuries in a car accident. And it was considered an untimely death. Her youngest daughter, however, Princess Stephanie, was in the car, but luckily she had survived despite sustaining injuries of her own. And Princess Stephanie's injuries kept her from attending her own mother's funeral, which is really sad. And it was also found that her accident happened as a result of an aneurysm, which she also might have survived had she not been in the car when it happened. So that's really sad and just unfortunate timing for her. Part 2. We will be talking about High Society, a film starring Grace Kelly, Bing Crosby, and Frank Sinatra, an iconic trio, I might say. A score was written and composed by Cole Porter, who's a famous Broadway composer and wrote some of the most famous musicals. The jazz legend Louis Armstrong was also in the cast, and he was stealing scenes in a supporting role. And you hear his band playing music in the background through most of the film, like a quasi-Greek chorus. The story follows a young, and this is the music of High Society. So Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby, the biggest singers of their time, and they even got to have their own duet in the film, because of course you do when you put the two of them together. It would be a crime. People would have gone to jail if they didn't have a song for both of them to sing together. Truly, just kidding. Louis Armstrong, jazz legend, and Cole Porter, another Broadway legend. So High Society, the story follows on a young woman named Tracy Lord on the day before her wedding to a man named George, who for all intents and purposes is respectable, but besides that we know not much else. In the opening scene, her mother and little sister Caroline are opening and cataloging all of her wedding presents. Diamonds, fancy china, everything a girl could want. However, Tracy appears casually indifferent at best. When Tracy finds out that her ex-husband, Dexter, played by Bing Crosby, has moved into the mansion next door, Caroline is over the moon with joy, her sister. She naively pines for the two to get back together. But Tracy is set on moving on. And there was even a cute little song about it. A tabloid magazine called Spy, very subtle, uses dirt against Seth Lord, who is Tracy's father, to blackmail Tracy into allowing two photographers, Mike Connor, played by Frank Sinatra, and Celeste Holmes. They come to photograph her wedding. Even though she's estranged from her father, she doesn't want to avoid scandal and doesn't want to have him ruining her life or her wedding. So she obliges. In town for the Newport Jazz Festival, Dexter also spends his time trying to win Tracy back. He says immediately in their first scene that he loves her, also subtle. He gives her a small replica of the boat they honeymooned on as a wedding present. And there's also a song where they're on the boat singing in their honeymoon as like a flashback. With all of society having been invited to this more respectable wedding because they had eloped, Dexter and Tracy, perhaps she's trying to smooth things over after her past impulsivity and her father's damaged reputation. At her bachelor party, she gets very drunk and flirts not just with her ex, but with a photographer, Mike. So Dexter and Mike sing a duet together, duh. Tracy wakes up the next day hungover AF, not remembering much until she remembers jumping into the pool with Mike. But though he reveals they only shared 2 kisses, only 2, though in the movie it looks like 5. Just saying. George, while mad, takes her back quickly enough, suspiciously quickly, but Tracy convinces him to call the whole thing off. The guests are waiting, though. That's so awkward. They have this whole wedding. Another scandal. Good thing they have a spare groom. Dexter. Louis Armstrong and his band, who'd been playing throughout the entire movie, take over the wedding music. Much to Tracy's chagrin at first, but she laughs it off for the final shot of the film. And this is actually a scene from a cut scene from the film. I actually found it. Just kidding. It's not. But at the end, they get married. Yay. Part 3. So these are some of the themes that were really prevalent in high society that I find are worth discussing, and also parallel with some real life prevalence of high culture versus low culture. Calling culture high and culture low is not speaking to the value of said culture. Actually, it's very much the opposite. However, it's subjective to how people felt about certain cultural things. If something was quote high culture, and it was considered fashionable, and low culture was seen as looked down upon, was like not educated or just something beneath someone. And of course, if we think about the United States socially in the 20th century, especially the mid 20th century around the time of this filming, you can easily guess, perhaps, really what would distinguish some culture as high culture and other culture as low culture. Fortunately, societal views have evolved since then, so that's very much different. But in the time, high culture versus low culture. So in the high culture, we see this in the film, the visuals of the film was a Rococo revival. So we see displays of wealth, and the aesthetic of the film with Baroque architectural features that seem to speak to a nostalgia for the past. The Lord Mansion evokes a nod to Rococo from the 18th century, which had been known for its playfulness, ornamental decoration, scenes of nature, and pastel colors. Actually, this one picture on the bottom left hand, or the top left, I do actually remember seeing in one of the scenes of High Society, like that portrait in the background, like behind Grace Kelly in the film. So I thought that was very clever of them. And the revival, the Rococo revival, had a chokehold on the Hollywood Regency styles in the 1950s and 60s, with the fusion of Baroque structures using light colors and the airiness of Rococo, alluding to the social and cultural dissonance of the mid-20th century. We see Hollywood film really up and coming, the golden era of film, so to speak, especially musical films. And we see a lot of Hollywood's elite not so subtly trying to establish themselves as a royalty of sorts. The US doesn't have a royal party, but We see a certain class of people trying to establish themselves as an aristocracy. The low culture is considered jazz, but it's not low culture. Jazz is very respectful and a very great art that has shaped the music. Another aspect of the low culture we see in the film is the tabloids, which is the more sleazy side of low culture, and still today is kind of considered lowbrow. Even the photographers working for Spy Magazine, at the end, they walk away from it because they want to be more respectable people. Like, they weren't really respected in the beginning of the film, even though they were very professional. They realized that the wealthy class are just as complicated and messy and not shallow and vapid. So they no longer feel okay about exploiting them for money. For them, it was just a job. But by the end of the movie, they realize that these are real people and become friends. So a lot of this was and more on the jazz music. The film is, of course, about high society, but the presence of Louis Armstrong's jazz band always playing in the background, as well as Dexter, a member of high society, his love for the art form presents the direct contrast. And we also see a member of high society embracing this art form, this art of the people. This was a contrast between the old ways and the new ideas, living according to tradition versus pursuing the life you want. And Dexter was very much the latter. He was taking the less taken road. He was very much following his heart, which he was trying to get Tracy to do the entire film, and she eventually did. So another theme is social expectations. George wants to marry Tracy because he sees her as a trophy wife. He comes from working class background, so this marriage is his ticket to a life filled with finer things. I think it's alluded to the fact that he worked for her father, so then marrying her, he would one day lead her father's company. He projects his idea of a perfect woman onto Tracy, who finds the pressure to live up to that image to be a burden, as one does. Otherwise, he doesn't appear to feel any real passion for her. Honestly, I also think the actors had no chemistry. Throughout the movie, he acts like she is someone he has to look after. Very paternalistic. Meanwhile, Dexter knows that Tracy is messy and feels sad sometimes, but he loves her for all the parts of her. And also, another changing theme symbolized by high culture versus low culture contrast is the changing times. The times they are changing. It was the 1960s. It was the middle of the 20th century. So if you know what was happening historically, jazz is a stand-in for the diversity of culture and groups of people who have always been left out of high society. In a time when the US was still segregated under Jim Crow laws, this film quietly embraced racial and class integration. Louis Armstrong brought joy and comedic relief to the movie, and his trumpet, always playing in the background, feels representative of the passion that was bubbling underneath the facade of social norms. This was a time in Hollywood where, because of McCarthyism and the Hays Code, artists, writers, and musicians couldn't be too on the nose when speaking out against the status quo. Knowing this, when you watch the film through the lens of the time it was made, you actually will see that the story offers some provocative critiques of high society. And I do think that the people behind the film, the actors, as we can see, are very much embracing of integration and very pro civil rights, just by the fact of including Louis Armstrong. What were efforts in this time in some of these films perfect? Of course not, but we definitely see a shift. So part 4. So these are some songs in pop culture that since Princess Grace's death, have been influenced by her. She was a muse in her lifetime and also still to this day. So for copyright reasons, I cannot play the song samples for you, but there will be linked in the description for you guys to check out on your own, which I recommend. They might not all be your cup of tea, but they're just really interesting to see some interpretations and just some of the inspiration. So this first one is a song I found, Hitchcock Blonde, by it's kind of a dark metal group called Devilment. Very niche, and it's not just about Grace, it's about like he lists in the second verse like all the singer lists like all the singers, like Ingrid, all the actresses who played in Hitchcock's films, Ingrid Bergman. So like the idea of a Hitchcock blonde, a commentary on like women being a muse and just the objectification of women, or just the theatricality of Hitchcock. And then this song called Princess Grace by a group called Spuds, and the song, it's another rock song, and it's like, and it's about her life basically. I wish I could play it for you. Sadly, I can't. Another song called Princess Grace by this group called the Political Blockheads. This one's kind of funny because it's definitely more like satirical. It sings about, so the beginning of the song has a clip of the radio announcement announcing her passing. So historical, iconic moment. And then the song is about like the events of her death and her, her life. This other song called Grace Kelly Blues by Eels, again, sings about Grace Kelly's life. Her roles were dramatic and known for being like kind of the wistful, sad girl roles. So I really thought that was, as an actress, she was really great. She just showed a lot of emotional depth and range in her roles, which is why she was so beloved as an actress and why she won an Oscar so young. And then, of course, this is my favorite song of all time, Grace Kelly by Micah. And the lyrics go, I'd like to be like Grace Kelly, ooh, but all her looks were too sad. So I tried a little Freddie, like Freddie Mercury. Na 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 da da da. I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be. Anyway, so hopefully that doesn't get a copyright strike. And if you watch this video, which if you watch none of them except for one, watch this one. There's a lot of homage to high society. It's actually really cool because in the musical, there's a song where she and her sister dress in these very fine gowns to like act as exaggerated caricatures of themselves for the reporters, because they know that the reporters are like trying to like make the rich people look weird. So they were leaning into that. And there's a song where they're playing at the piano together. And you see that opening, one of the early shots of the film is Micah playing at the piano with this little girl in a dress. So that was cute. The end.
Thank you, Jess, for that lovely presentation about Princess Grace and Monaco and the royal house. And really appreciate that. And so we will continue with our next section. And the next section here is about our critique of high society. And
should I put the screen back on?
Can you put a screen, like a just a screen, like a nice. Anyway, yeah, put a screen there. We'll leave it as a placeholder so that the audience die. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll begin our little critique of High Society, the film. And we'll start with Aya. Yeah, that's perfect. We can just leave that one there. Thanks.
Yes, because you're talking about this cultural contribution.
Absolutely. So we can start with Aya's contribution to her critique. And then we will continue with the rest of us.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Jess, for this great presentation. You really brought to light a lot of different contextual background information that, I personally didn't know, and I'm sure that many people in our audience probably would have missed. So thank you for that. And also it was visually very appealing. So thank you for that as well. Um, this is my first Grace Kelly movie that I've watched. I did watch the movie that it was based on, the Philadelphia story first a while back in the good old days when Netflix was requesting DVDs, getting them in the mail, and then, mailing them back out. That was my first introduction to that movie. So it was interesting to see a musical version of that Katharine Hepburn classic. I think the visuals were gorgeous. It was still, though, a little difficult for me to stop myself from comparing it to the Philadelphia story. So that's kind of why earlier I had said that I wished I watched this movie first, just so that I could go in with like clear, fresh eyes. Um, as far as my ratings go for our first category, cultural appeal, I would give it a 6.5. I do think that it makes some important commentary. It has a satirical look on the expectations people place on different classes. Um, there were some aspects that I was not too keen on. I think the one scene that probably irked me the most was the one where they go on a drive through Billionaires Row and like they're showing all the boarded up mansions. Um, that I think that was the scene that irked me. It's funny because even though this movie was made in the 50s, I feel like it resonates a lot with our current social order in the 2020s. So that was one thing. As far as popular appeal, I would give it an 8. Um, I think it's definitely withstood the test of time. It has established a cultural legacy. I think that it's become sort of part of the Hollywood lexicon, if you would say. So for that, I would give it an 8. As far as um, legacy, potential, and historical significance, I would also give it an 8 for the same reasons that I had mentioned in popular appeal. I think it's withstood the test of time. It's a classic. It's a classic for a reason. It brings forth a lot of different elements beautifully, whether it's music, set design, costumes, the story itself. So it has an enduring legacy already, considering that we are still talking about it some 6 decades later. Um, as far as clear purpose and intention, um, I would give it a 7. I can see how it sets out to challenge the status quo. I can see what it's doing in some areas of the movie, but I do feel like in other parts of the movie, it falls flat. Um, I think it's interesting. It just serves to show how things like race and class are a social construct. We see the some characters from quote unquote high society grappling with the reputation that comes from jazz music. It's not seen as hot, quote unquote, highbrow culture, although now it's kind of seen as the opposite. People view and regard jazz music as this almost out of touch, highbrow sort of art, at least within the mainstream. So it does have a purpose of tackling social class. I feel like it succeeds in some areas, in others, not so much. Um, so as far as effective use of symbolism, I think that Jess did a great job of, sharing the significance of certain set design choices, integration of art and portraits throughout the show, throughout the movie. So I will give that category, under that category, 8. And then, sorry, just a sec. Effective storytelling or narrative arc. I will give that a 7. Um, I think that we set up with a main character who is sort of lost in herself. Um, she is kind of basing her own character, her own reactions in opposition to what she views as her previous mistakes, the mistakes of her father, rather than digging into who she is as a person. So to see someone kind of in that phase of being lost and then coming into her own, and finding who she is by the end of the movie, I think that gives it a quite lovely narrative arc. Um, Performance quality, I would give that a 7. Um, I think with Grace Kelly, she does really well with quiet and introspective moments. I think, well, this is my personal opinion, but I think she struggles more with things that require more over-the-top deliverance of her lines, whether it's that funny scene of her putting on a satirical performance of what it means to be a high society member for the reporters, her and her sister, or when she has to delve into moments of anger. Um, I feel like she's more of a reserved actress, so moments that require a little bit more outbursts, she might she struggled a little bit in my opinion, especially because like I said, I the whole time I was kind of comparing it to Katharine Hepburn's
That's hard.
yeah, 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 her rendition of the same character. So in my head, I'm like, stop comparing it, but I can't help it. And Katharine Hepburn, she's so great at what she does.
Hmm.
So yeah, but that's just for Grace Kelly. I think that Frank Sinatra did a good job as well, acting the part of a jaded journalist who then becomes completely besotted with her. I think Crosby also did a great job playing like a devil may care type of character. So I think that it was overall a strong cast. I just wasn't able to give higher marks just because of what I perceived as weaknesses in Grace's acting in as this particular character. Uh, Technical quality, I would give it an 8.5. I think the lighting, the color scheme, the props, they were just gorgeous. It was a visually stunning movie. So that is my score for technical quality. And then effective ROI. Um, I would give it an 8. Um, just because I would imagine that putting on a movie of this scale, with the type of sets that they're working and, you know, the setting itself, Newport, California, I would imagine for that time period, it probably would not have been a cheap project at all to do. But it has given us this sort of lasting legacy within the film industry. So that is my score for that. And then for market appeal, I would give it a 9. It's withstood the test of time. It, would entertain people from different generations across different cultures. I think the story at its heart is one that people can relate to, like I said, from different cultures. It is a film that does tackle the idea of social class and, you know, um, that is something that is prevalent in cultures all over the world. It's not just within the United States, although the way class is constructed within the United States is going to be unique to other countries throughout the world. But yeah, that is my score of the movie. And thank you, Jess, for choosing this project for Monaco. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed the slides.
Yeah,
And
It was they
I
were great.
and I liked hearing your takes. I
I'll give
actually
my
purposely
take.
did not watch the Philadelphia. Yeah, I purposely didn't want to, just to note, I didn't watch the Philadelphia story for preparing for this on purpose because I didn't want them to like, I wanted a pure lens. But anyway, Allison's turn.
Okay, so I definitely watched both of them again because I can't think of the one without the other. Um,
Hmm.
I th I think I'll just go through this pretty practically as before, my usual way. Obviously, Princess Grace is a legend in Philadelphia, which is my hometown. So I have a lot of love in my heart for Princess Grace and everything she accomplished in her career, and Gene Kelly, who is also related to Princess Grace, what he did in the world of rowing. So thank you, Jess, for picking this one. I thank you very much. As far as the total score for this, I will give it a 77%. I'm going to break that down for you. As far as cultural appeal, it offers a very glossy surface level description of US upper class life in the 1950s, but it feels sometimes a little bit shallow to me, focusing more on spectacle than more of the nuances of the class it's representing. And it does capture the glamour. The thing was expensive to make, as Ella has said. Um, but it feels a little bit superficial and appeals more, in my opinion, to people who are drawn to spectacle, as is in the musical style. Now, as far as popular appeal, obviously the star power of Grace Kelly, Frank Sinatra, Louis Armstrong, and this amazing jazz soundtrack, it does give a pretty good appeal, especially given what was popular at that time. It allowed for a broad appeal, and the combination of classic Hollywood glamour, of course, makes it very iconic for audiences who were looking for entertainment value. So I would say a 9 for that. Legacy potential / historical significance, I'm going to give that a 7. And though it maintained a positive reputation due to the cast and production quality, the lasting influence, I feel like, is there, but there are maybe other films that outshine it. in terms of the era itself. And for example, I could think about see if I can remember what the one I was thinking about. Yeah, like On the Waterfront, for example. I think I got much more impacted by that film than others, than this one per se, but I do think that it does make some interesting commentaries, and it does kind of give a snapshot into the world of that time. But I don't know if it like is like, oh wow, this is like a game changer in the world of cinema, like Terrence Malick piece or something like that. So I give it a 7. And as far as mastery of medium, I'll give it an 8. It excels within the constraints of the musical genre, and it has lovely choreography, dancing, sound, and visuals. But I don't feel like it pushes the boundaries of musical filmmaking, though it's technically proficient. I feel like it plays things a little bit safe. And for the clear purpose and intention, of course, its intention is to entertain and offer a really like a little bit of sarcasm and a very interesting view of love and societal expectation, which I think it does well. But the messaging is, as I said, it feels a little bit superficial at times. So I'll give that a 7. And for symbolism, actually not ranking it so high because I actually ranked that a 5 because these symbols like wealth, love, social roles, and so forth are present. It felt a little bit more or like it was not, in my view, as focused on, like, I know how some films will like really bring out symbols like consistently, especially nowadays, they're always focusing on symbolism. But it's not like it was horrible, it's just that I didn't feel like it was the main focus. For storytelling, I would say it follows the traditional romantic comedy structure. It felt very predictable, of course. And while it's emotionally engaging, it didn't break any kind of new ground for narrative depth, in my opinion. And the plot is charming, of course. I love Louis Armstrong, by the way, and his little comments. But I felt like it was pretty easy to kind of see where it was going, even though I knew the story before. But if I was watching it again for the first time, I probably would have noticed some things and felt the predictable art. But I can't say for sure, so give it a 7 or so. For performance quality, in my opinion, I think it was a 9 because Grace Kelly, Frank Sinatra, and Louis Armstrong as a combination bring the film so much life. And I agree with Ella that sometimes Grace Kelly doesn't like shine in certain ways, but I do think that the performance does elevate the material with strong chemistry and skill that enhances the appeal. And then for technical quality, the production is well made. I would say it's a 9 with good quality costumes, set, and sound, very expensive and lavish, contributing to the luxurious atmosphere there. And the technical execution is very good. It's visually appealing and it complements the narrative. And as far as the effective return on investment, I would say 8. It's a very large scale as far as production value, and the star power did generate good returns. And while it was commercially successful and culturally resonant, it didn't really push, like I said, push the boundaries. And so it is not known like all over the world now, but it did a good job. It made the money back. And as far as the market appeal and commercial viability now, I would say it's a 9 because it's still here. It's not gone out of the public view. And it's a kind of cast, and the lighthearted nature of the film appeals to both classic cinema people, I almost said cinnamon, but and mainstream artists.
Cinnamon.
Yes, classic cinema enthusiasts, and ensures a continued relevance. I think it can continue to be relevant across the generations. So that's my total scoring.
Cool. Awesome takes from both ladies.
And you, my dear, what
Do
was
you,
your scores? What was your scoring?
oh, so I guess I think for a lot of it, I'm pretty much in line with what you and Ella said. Like, I would say like a 6 or 7 out of 10 for each of those categories. Um, because I do think it's a really good representation of old Hollywood culturally and just what I know had the top performers of the time, the top icons of the time. So it had a lot of popular appeal in its day. And I do think because a lot of the popularity of Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Grace Kelly, Louis Armstrong has stood the test of time. It still has popular appeal today, and especially popular appeal for people who love old Hollywood films or love to watch vintage, nostalgic pieces, and also while also having great like important historical and cultural value. Like I definitely, if I was teaching a film class or something, or an American history class, like a recent American history class, I would definitely, play this film and would recommend it to anyone who's interested in like the history. If they were to recommend like certain key historical like Hollywood films, this would be a good one to add to the list. I
Definitely.
I agree with some of the superficiality. I also have I mean, I do appreciate showing the nuances of class, and there aren't enough films that do that well. And for either high or like, the upper classes or the lower classes, working class films are always a bit like hokey. I do think this one was more like caricatures. I sort of, it's like trying to be like, they're rich, they're just like us. They have feelings.
Mhm.
Which is like, okay. I do think that the little performance she and her little sister put on, while cute, was also a little bit hokey. I feel like today that would read as cringe,
Mhm.
the youths. But and I also, I do think it really didn't have a lot of depth. I think they also kind of dropped it off, like really, aside from that, like one or two scenes, they sort of just like abandoned it for the rest of the plot. Um, so that was like, I mean, they could have leaned into it a little more and made it more interesting. Um, but then they kind of just like did it a little bit in the beginning and then it just like went away. I also think that the romantic plot was, it could have been made more compelling. I do think the first scene where he's like, I love you and I want you back. I was like, whoa, sir. Like, you're not even going to try to woo her. Like, you just went straight for it. Like, went straight for this, straight to the call to action. I mean, a little bit.
He knows
A
what
little
he
bit sloppy
wants.
in that presentation, but it was, I mean, it was like, oh, cute, but it was like, again, it's just it didn't feel like compelling. I just feel like today, like he would have definitely, if like I would have been like, he would have tried to be her friend and was like no clear, and then showing, and then the character George, first of all, the act he we never saw him, and like the actor had no real chemistry with Grace Kelly. I just think I'm like was not believable of them as a couple. I was like, how? I'm like, did she just like find a picture of him? I was like, okay, that one. Like, there's no like, because obviously, she was in a relationship with this person, but it didn't seem
I
apparent
feel
in the
like that was
film.
on purpose.
I know. And I feel like there could have been a more compelling way to do that because I mean, a lot of people, there are some people that are, will be in long-term relationships with someone that they don't truly love, but they'll like hype themselves up about it, or there's other things like validation from them that they mistake for attraction, and or like the things
Mhm.
they get from the person or the relationship that they really love and have strong feelings about, that they misinterpret as feelings for the person, as
Mhm.
love. And I think they could have showed that. um and Grace Kelly though was great. She was really fun to watch the whole time. I think that she made the movie really enjoyable. I would have I would have liked to maybe see a little more plot about the jazz festival, aside from the fact it's like Dexter was like randomly,
I love.
had a jazz festival, and then Louis Armstrong was there, and I liked them as the Greek chorus. Like I described them as a quasi Greek chorus because I thought that was cool. I really liked
Mhm.
that, and it was a very interesting way to like weave them into the story in a way that probably that wouldn't get them in trouble because of the times. Though it would
Yeah.
have been nice to like see, and Louis Armstrong was like also very watchable and enjoyable, and he stole every scene he was in, and he was funny. I just would have liked to see maybe his character have a little more motivation. Obviously, he's playing a fictionalized version of himself,
Yeah.
but it would have been fun to give him like a mini arc,
Hmm.
give
It
him
would.
a motivation. I don't know.
Yes.
Maybe he could have
What's
been
your
like the
total
matchmaker
rating?
or something. I would say like a 7 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Grace Kelly is a great actress. I agree with Ayla that she didn't like she was really great with the introspective moments, and I think her strengths played a lot better in some of her other films. I do think this is more of a commercial piece, like it's definitely a pop boiler. It just happened to be her last film before she married the prince and became Princess Grace. So I think that's what makes it a significant part of her career.
Right.
But had her career continued on its trajectory, I don't think this would have stuck out